how yin's doing? I'm Ian, and this is my TF2 How to Killstreak series, where we look at the best and worst weapons this game has on offer, and I show you how to get a killstreak with them, because everything is a bad idea until it works. Today, as you could tell by reading the title and thumbnail of this video, we'll be covering the Gunslinger. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Don't bring a wrench to a gunfight!
The Gunslinger is a melee weapon for the Engineer, and is acquired from the Engineer Milestone 2 achievement. As for what it does, it swaps out the Engineer's default wrench for a robotic prosthetic. Whether or not he always had this prosthetic underneath his Engineer glove has always been a subject of debate in the TF2 community ever since this weapon was added. Some players will even debate whether or not he lost the limb due to some sort of workplace accident from working against mercenaries actively trying to kill each other, or if he cut off the limb himself. My personal headcanon is that he lost the limb naturally due to the constant gunfights that go down in this game, and then refused to let the medic reattach it because he did not trust him to not insert some baboon uteruses or god knows what else in there alongside it. Regardless of what your personal beliefs on this matter are, the weapon itself has very straightforward to understand stats. Firstly, this melee weapon boosts your maximum health by 25. Secondly, it makes it so that every third attack you manage to land on a target with this weapon will be guaranteed to land a critical hit. The downside to this specific feature is that you're incapable of getting random crits with this weapon. But let's be honest, when you have a way to get guaranteed critical hits on your melee swings, not being able to get them at random is hardly a downside. Plus, when you consider the fact that in order to get this guaranteed critical hit, you'll need to have hit someone with your melee weapon twice, and you quickly realize that whoever you're hitting is not going to be at full health. And this means that unless they receive some form of healing, ubercharge, or are a Dolocus bar heavy, they're guaranteed to die on that third swing, making this unquestionably the Engineer's best weapon to use on medieval mode. But that's not really the reason why everyone uses this. The main reason people use this weapon is because it replaces your normal sentry with a mini-sentry, which costs less metal and can be built faster, but can't be upgraded whatsoever. This thing is invaluable for more aggressive Engineer players, such as those who wish to build teleporters to help their teammates on payload offense. Or really any Engineer player who doesn't want to sit around waiting to upgrade their sentry whatsoever and just wants to have something to help them shoot stuff down. These mini-sentries are also the absolute bane of any scout or soldier player's existence, since they effectively create a no-fly zone for them to run around and have fun in whatsoever, meaning if multiple Engineers, or even a single Engineer if they're particularly crafty with their sentry placement, can effectively make certain maps unplayable. Just remember that some players really hate it when people use this weapon, since it effectively counters certain playstyles that many players are rather fond of, so don't be surprised if soldiers start switching to the direct hit and just make it their life's mission to force you to switch to the short circuit. You see, the short circuit is the perfect solution to anyone who thinks that using explosive projectiles is a good way to counter Engineer, because if the Engineer is using this, and said Engineer has a healthy supply of metal, that's no longer the case. Because remember, when it comes to mini-sentries, you're not upgrading these things whatsoever, and their initial cost to construct is significantly lower than standard sentries. This means as long as you're not trying to build all of your buildings simultaneously, you should have some metal in reserve to deal with some stray rockets coming your way. And even if you don't have the metal or decide to use a different secondary, it's honestly not that hard to rebuild when everything costs 100 or less metal to build these days. And don't forget to build your other buildings, because while the mini-sentry will be the primary source of many of your kills, the dispenser will keep you alive long enough to ensure that killstreak keeps going for as long as possible, and the teleporters will ensure that you have a steady supply of meat shields to keep you safe from the inevitable ubercharge that comes your way. If you're interested in a fine minutia of where to place your buildings, I recommend looking up the YouTuber Uncle Dane, since he can go into the breadth of this far greater than I ever could. But a few general guidelines to follow are: buildings built together stay together, so make sure that your dispenser, teleporter, and sentry are spread out far enough that if a soldier starts shooting at one with a rocket, the others won't get hit by the splash damage whatsoever. Keep in mind that your sentries have a limited range. They can't snipe people from across the map. They have a giant bubble that you can see when you're placing them that effectively shows you where their visibility range is. If someone's standing outside of it, they won't be able to shoot back at them. So make sure that no snipers can destroy this gun from out of that range. Also keep in mind that on certain maps, especially those that have tons of plant life, you can sometimes hide a mini-sentry inside the grass or shrubbery of an any kind, since they don't always have collision attached to them. Another more interesting way to try to hide your sentries from other players is to keep in mind what the default settings look like. As a quick reminder, the default settings result in your weapons being rather large in your hands, taking up a sizable chunk of the lower right screen by default. This means if you place something so that when the enemy team walks in that the mini-sentry will be tucked away in the lower right corner, there's a good chance they might not see it until it's too late. Especially if you intentionally place the mini-sentry to face the wall so that it'll take a while to turn around to shoot someone, at which point they'll have moved too far into the room to be able to back out and retreat to safety. And while this tactic can be something of a one-trick pony that results in them immediately destroying it once they respawn, if you were using a Frontier Justice, that's what you were hoping for anyway. It's not exactly an honorable playstyle, but let's be honest, you all know this was going to come up at some point. The Frontier Justice is simply put the win more weapon you're going to use alongside the Gunslinger. At the cost of reducing your clip size to 3 bullets before needing to reload with your shotgun, this weapon gives you guaranteed crits when your sentries get destroyed, assuming you manage to get a few kills. Or assists, the game doesn't judge in that regard. Regardless, you'll get some guaranteed crits with your primary weapon if you pull this off correctly, though you will lose them if you die before shooting people, so don't try to hoard too many crits on you, because critical hits will not improve your durability whatsoever. They'll increase your lethality, but not your durability. Backstabbing spies and headshotting snipers will kill you just as easily regardless if you have crits or not. If you need these crits in a pinch, you can always self-destruct the sentry remotely, that way you can get those critical hits it's charged up from killing people earlier so that you can defend yourself against the guy who finally managed to close the gap on you. This is what I would call a win more tactic, however, in that it's only going to work on a team that you are already winning with. This is something you can do to ensure that the enemy team doesn't have a chance to recover and turn the tides of battle in an epic comeback. It's not something you can pull out to turn the tides when your own team is losing. It's kind of like what Lazy Purple said about the Flog and how it feels to play Pyro.
The only team that you're going to be crushing is a team that you were crushing anyway.
However, a far more interesting tactic to use alongside the Gunslinger is to use it alongside the Widowmaker. This is because the Widowmaker doesn't need to reload whatsoever, giving you ammo based on how much damage you did, and actually gives you a 10% damage buff against anyone your sentry is targeting. Normally, the second stat doesn't matter whatsoever, since realistically, if something's being shot at by a level 3 upgraded sentry, it's probably gonna die soon anyway, regardless if you're shooting at it or not. But with a Gunslinger Engineer, this actually makes a lot more sense, since realistically, your mini-sentry is effectively just a pistol that can never miss. This means while the mini-sentry can easily make quick work of more light classes like Scouts, more resilient classes, such as the Heavy, will be near impossible for your mini-sentry to kill by themselves in most situations. As a result of this, the Widowmaker's 10% damage buff can sometimes be the difference between you winning or dying in a given gunfight. Just don't use it alongside the Short Circuit, because these two weapons also compete for metal alongside your buildings. As a result, you will pretty much constantly be running out of ammo if you try to use these two in conjunction. In fact, it's widely considered that the Gunslinger, Widowmaker, and Short Circuit combo is one of the worst combos for the Engineer's loadout in the entire game, since everything is relying on the same ammo pool. All in all, I give the Gunslinger a flanker out of 10. If you're the kind of person who wants to play extremely aggressively and doesn't want to sit around to build up your structures whatsoever, this is the weapon for you. Whether the reason you do this is because you lack the patience to actually build your structures up to level 3, or because you like to play 5 CP, it doesn't matter. This is the weapon for you. But that will be all for now. Sorry this one took so much longer than my usual upload schedule, but some stuff came up in real life. With that said, be sure to like the video if you did, comment down below what you want to see me cover in the future, subscribe if you don't want to miss the next video I upload. I've been Ian, you have been you, and this has been my TF2 How to Killstreak guide to the Gunslinger. And stay tuned, the Ambassador is coming up next.